Good afternoon and welcome to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We have a big day today and a lot of live trials to keep you posted on. So we want to introduce right now our guest today, Thomas Liotti. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about Jones right now. Sure. So as we just said, the prosecution was trying to get the death penalty here. And the defense, of course, is basically trying to save his life right now. What do you think from what you've read about this and seen so far?
What do I think about the mitigation phase of the trial?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think, honestly, the whole death penalty prosecution is flawed from the inception because you have, first of all, a state where that is condoned and where they have a death penalty statute and so forth. So you have jurors being picked in the first instance before the trial saying that they can act fairly and impartially. But by the same token, this is a state where they have the death penalty. So these are jurors who are perhaps inclined to impose the death penalty, whereas perhaps in other jurisdictions you might have people of a different mental makeup where they say, you know, I'm just morally opposed to the death penalty. So now we're in this mitigation phase of a trial. And really, from a moral and ethical standpoint, I think the court has to look at maybe conducting a new hearing, although that's not part of the procedure. But when you think about it, should this jury that's already convicted and heard all of this evidence, all of this graphic evidence, photographs and what have you, now decide on whether Mr. Jones should receive the death penalty or not? I think that that is flawed. And I think maybe we need a different jury or a separate voir dire of the existing jury to determine whether they can still be fair and impartial under the circumstances, even though they had a prejudgment beforehand when this jury was first chosen, because I think they were probably all prone to say, yes, let's convict this guy because he, you know, is charged with murdering 5 children and so on. So for that reason, you know, I think this whole process, first of all, the death penalty itself, you know, is a problem from the get-go. I mean, it's just, you know, something that probably, you know, as a defense lawyer, when I am a defense lawyer, I would be totally opposed to that naturally. But even assuming that you've got a jurisdiction where it's allowed, and it's not allowed in New York anymore because our Court of Appeals declared it unconstitutional in 2004, after it was brought back in with Governor Pataki in 1995. But you got a system that really is flawed from A to Z. You know, you just can't have jurors deciding guilt and then deciding mitigation. It just doesn't work. You know, the mental makeup is really very problematical. And there's one other point here that should be noted. You know, in the guilt phase of the trial, you're looking at, you know, did this person have the mens rea, or as we lawyers would refer to it, as the evil mind? And prosecutors rely on any deliberation whatsoever to make their case. So if the defendant planned anything, that to them is mens rea, okay? But coupled with that is also an understanding of mental disease or defect. And these are not the same things. And you're asking jurors, lay jurors, some of whom probably don't even have a high school education, to decide on the mental state of Timothy Jones when he allegedly committed all of these acts and killed 5 children. So, you know, psychology is an inexact science. So now we're going to have lay jurors deciding whether somebody is mentally unfit and could not have committed this crime knowingly and intelligently. It makes no sense. You really need sort of a professional jury, in a sense, to decide whether somebody's got a mental disease or defect. It's an inexact science. So even psychologists don't know what that means.
Right. All right, thank you so much. We want to play you the guilty verdict, which again has already happened. The jury already found Jones Jr. guilty. All right, so again, we are live inside the Delgado trial in Texas. That is Tom Sovensky, a digital forensic expert, talking about the cell phone towers, how they were able to ping Delgado's cell phone during their investigation. I want to bring in our guest right now, Thomas Liotti, a trial attorney. Thomas, one of the things we were talking about in the break was the whole other piece of this, which is the fact that Delgado had fled to Mexico after she was questioned by police about these murders.
Right. Absolutely. And that is a big part of the prosecution case here, because they're going to be talking about consciousness of guilt. Why would she run, in other words? And it's interesting when you look at the law on this subject that Mexico apparently has a better understanding of our Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment, than the laws in Texas provide for. So in these situations where you have extradition, you have to have the Department of State approving something other than the death penalty, which is what happened here. That's why Mexico finally agreed to extradite her after the Department of State told Texas, listen, you can't do the death penalty in this case. It has to be something less than that. So they agreed on 35 years as a possible penalty for her. But consciousness of guilt will be still a very important part of the prosecution case here.
So otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to come back if they hadn't made the trade-off.
They would not have extradited her. I've had, drug cases and other cases down where people have run away to Mexico, and for whatever reason, sometimes it's been alleged that the Mexican court, the high court, has been bribed there, but the high court just refuses to extradite people if they're facing a draconian sentence like 50 years, for example, or the death penalty.
Let's backtrack a little bit to this digital forensic guy. He was talking about these cell phone towers and how, he was showing those maps which had the area outlined and circled and kind of grayed out, if you will. He, from what I understood, was saying that that wasn't specific enough. That wasn't great evidence there.
Yeah, I think what you have to do in a contract for murder case, you have to break down the contract. What exactly was the contract? So supposedly this was originally supposed to be just a robbery, and somehow it evolved into a murder and a death, okay? So is this something that Delgado contracted for? And her case is premised upon her saying as a defense that, no, this is not something I agreed to. She's got a problem in that there is a cooperating witness in this case. Crystal Cortez, was a getaway driver and will be coming in to testify and say that, yeah, this was the plan. So she was also charged with the death penalty, Crystal Cortez was. But she's gotten out here from the death penalty with a penalty of 35 years. Not much of a bargain, frankly, but that's what she's agreed to.
And when we look at this case, and like you said, this is the contract that's really going to have to be examined here. What are the things that needs to happen for the defense to work out or to help her?
You remember from the movie The Paper Chase? Maybe it's before your time. You're a young pup. Okay? So Professor Kingsfield was the contract professor at Harvard Law School in the movie, right? Timothy Bottoms was the student, a 1L student. And he went over the elements of a contract. And it's the same thing here in a contract for murder, right? So it's offer, acceptance, consideration. Consideration being money or some other promise for a promise, something like that. So I think what they have to do is attack the nature of a contract. Was there an offer? Did Delgado make an offer? Did she accept an offer? Was there consideration here? Was it actually paid or promised, or what exactly was it? And I think you've got some elements of the contract that can be broken down here, wherein the defense might have a triable case.
All right, Thomas Liotti, thank you so much. We have a lot more to break down. Stay with us here on the Law and Crime Network.